Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's author chat. I've got Valerie Keogh, aka Valerie Dickinson, here with me today.
Me.
Valerie, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, my name is Valerie Dickinson. I write under the name Valerie Keogh. I write crime series and psychological thrillers. I was originally self-published. I self-published 9 books before I got my first publishing contract with Book Couture in 2018. I published 2 books with them, Secrets Between Us and The Housewife. And then last year I got a publishing contract with Bloodhound Books, and I'm still with them. So they took on my Irish self-published series. They repackaged them, new covers, new titles. So they came out with them, and I'm doing 2 more with that series. I'm also contracted to write psychological thrillers. So the first of those came out in February. That was The 3 Women. And the second one came out on Wednesday, The Perfect Life. And I have a third one coming out in September. So I'm kept busy.
You are indeed. So the first question I'm going to ask, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to ask you my question first.
Okay.
I read The Secrets Between Us recently, and it is an amazing book. I think it might be up there at the end of the year with my books of the year. And I want to know what inspired you to write it. How did you, because it's so creepy.
It was, strangely enough, I was in a local garden centre, Whitehall Garden Centre, huge big garden centre. I was in having coffee, and the sales assistant who served me the coffee was a very pretty, maybe an 18-year-old, a very strikingly good-looking girl. And I turned around at my tray to go back to my seat, and I saw the same girl. They were twins. And I thought it was the most eerie thing to see somebody, and they were identical twins. And it was quite disconcerting to see them like that. And then later I saw them together and I thought, it's quite, I would find it very odd to have somebody so like me, but not me. So I was thinking about them for a while, and I was awake one night, and I often get my best ideas when I'm trying to sleep. So I was there in the middle of the night thinking about these twins, and that story just kind of came to me. And by the morning I had the whole idea. So all I had to then was write it.
Because without giving things away, but the twins is quite pivotal, isn't it, to how things end up.
Yeah.
And so it is very eerie.
Good, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yes, excellent. I've got a question from Samantha Brownlee now, one of our admins on the screen.
Hi, Samantha.
Yeah, she says, you're a very supportive member of the group and generous with your time for other authors. Does this help you to feel more connected to the writing community?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a very lonely occupation, sitting here in your room, writing away. And without a doubt, joining groups like yours and other different groups and getting to know people. So you're not just flitting in and out and not meeting people. You're actually getting to know people within those groups. And I have developed really good friendships with different writers in various groups and with readers. And they're equally important. Writers, because they understand exactly what you're going through. When you said you're sick to your teeth editing, they know exactly what you mean. And then when you say, oh, I'm number 65 in the ranking, they can understand why you get so excited. Whereas my husband goes, oh, okay. So it makes a big difference. I mean, I've got very friendly with Jenny O'Brien, who writes crime series. She lives in Guernsey. I actually went to Guernsey to meet her. Jim Odie, I met him because myself and Jim run Noir at the Bar in Bath. So we get different writing groups or writers going to that as well. So yeah, it is very important. And it's the enjoyable part of being a writer is making friends within the community. And the community is very supportive. I mean, you go to any of the groups, including yours, and ask a question, and I guarantee you'll get an answer, which is very, very handy sometimes. When you just can't figure out the answer yourself, to be able to tap into that resource is great.
I can imagine that. Jenny O'Brien actually left you a question.
Jenny O'Brien, oh God, why'd she leave me?
She said she's sorry, but she's going to miss it if she's out for tea. There's no lockdown in Guernsey.
She's gone to the pub.
Yeah, probably. She says, I know you write under a pseudonym. Why?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's actually an easy one. I was afraid what she was going to ask me. When started writing, I started writing my Irish series first, and then when that didn't take off, because in my innocence, when I wrote my first book, I thought they'd be queuing up at the door wanting to take it on. That doesn't happen in the real world. So I decided I'd write a different series. So I wrote my Hudson and Connolly series, which is about Nicola Connolly, who's a serial killing nurse. Now, I was working as a nurse at the time, so I thought it would be a good idea not to write under my real name in case I gave anybody ideas, because Nicola Connolly actually kills off residents in nursing homes, and I worked in a nursing home. So I actually borrowed my mother's maiden name, which I got, that's where Keogh comes from. So, and then I just stuck to it. I mean, I was thinking at one stage that I'd publish some of my books under one name and then others under another, but it doesn't work like that. And you're better off building a brand as such. So I stuck to Keogh. What I didn't realize at the time was, of course, is that people do have a problem pronouncing it. It's the first thing my publishers always say, how do you pronounce your surname? So I go into Cambridge Dictionary, actually, it's very handy. They can pronounce it really well. So I send them the link to that. That always works.
That's handy. Mike Henry has asked, when writing a series, how do you decide how much backstory is needed?
That's a good question, and that's a difficult one, because you don't want to pile all the backstory into sort of boring next, the readers have already read it. So I try and keep it to a minimum, actually. I probably err on the side of not putting enough in. I just put enough. In fact, I'm writing the 5th in my Irish series at the moment, and I'm using characters from the old book from the last series. So I'm trying to put enough in that people realize they've been here before, without putting pages and pages and pages of info, which is just an info dump, and it's boring for people. So it's a fine line that isn't always easy to get.
Yeah. And I would imagine that some of them need more backstory than others.
Yes, I mean, definitely. I mean, I try and give a bit more from the main characters, obviously. Yeah, it is hard, though. I think because my series have come out close together, I haven't really had a huge issue with that. And the timeline within the stories is quite close. They're literally going from one to the other. So they can be read as standalones, but like any series, you are better reading them from the very first one, and it gives you a better sense of the people, I think, as well. So, and I think readers have enjoyed reading them from the beginning. I know a couple of people have said to me they've started on the 2nd or 3rd and they've gone back and started the first one again. So I think it makes it easier.
Yeah. Samantha's asked, she says she believes some friends inspired characters in The Three Women. How do they feel now it's written and out there?
Sorry, I missed that. Oh yeah, sorry. So no, well, no, they didn't actually inspire it. Oh God, no, I must hasten to say they didn't. I had last year a friend of mine died, and it was because I was thinking about friendship, rather than being inspired by them. Because Edel was a very special friend. There was 3 of us who nursed together. 4 of us who nursed together, and we used to go away on weekends together and stuff. And then when she passed away, it disrupts that friendship, and you start thinking about how different people see you, and that's what started me thinking about friendship as such in general. So although they started me thinking about it, it's not actually based on them. They'd be horrified. My friends are quite conservative. It certainly wouldn't be it wouldn't be the prostitute or the that's in the book. Definitely not.
Do you ever base any of your characters on people you know?
No, I don't really. I might base some of their quirks. And one of my, I remember years and years and years ago, the girl I knew vaguely, and her fiance or husband as he is now, he always wore yellow kind of creamy trousers, a white shirt and a yellow tie. And always, anytime you saw this man, he was wearing that outfit. So one of my characters wears those clothes. That kind of thing I take up, quirks and stuff. And sometimes things have happened to my friends. One of my friends, an episode that happened to her, I used in one of my crime series books. I did tell her. I didn't use her name, obviously. So, oh yeah. Like a bit like my sign. Careful up in my book.
No one ever says. Do people joke about that with you when they know that you're an author?
Yeah, they say, "Oh, don't put me in your book," but really, what they're saying is, "Put me in my book." I don't. Quirks and foibles and funny things, and sometimes funny things people say, or speech mannerisms, that kind of thing, you use to color a story, but not the people as such. No, not can I write murder mysteries? So I have murdering people in mine.
Oh, Jenny's here. She says, "Hi, Valerie. Your hair looks great. Self-cut or ... question mark."
I should have brought my shears and show you. Yeah, cut it myself. Is she back from the pub already?
Must have been shot. Maybe lockdown hasn't ended.
Yeah. Self-cut. Yeah, I did cut it myself. I think I did a pretty good job, actually. Although I had to stop going, when you start trying to straighten it. I stopped. Otherwise I had no hair left.
I've got a question from Olivia Sababra. I'm not sure if I pronounced her surname right. Apologies, Olivia, if I didn't. She said, "Is there going to be more in your Dublin murder mysteries?"
Yes, Livia, there is. I've just finished the first draft of book 5, and I have contracted to write book 6. That'll be next year. So book 5 is coming out on the 4th of November, which is good. And book 6 sometime next year. I haven't got a date for that yet. And it'll probably stop at 6. Probably.
Maybe, unless you have a really good idea.
Yeah, unless I have a really good idea. Yeah.
She also asked if you've ever read a book that stayed with you.
I tell you, a book that stayed with me isn't one I read. It's one my mother read to me when we were very young. My mum was a very keen reader, and she had a really, really old copy of Alice in Wonderland. And she used to read that to us. It was one of those old books that kind of had fabric cover. And I remember to this day, the cover was kind of pink and blue, kind of floral passion on the cover. And she read that to us at night, going to bed. And I think because she read classic books to us when we were kids, it really spurred my imagination, I think, especially books like Alice in Wonderland, where you literally escaped to another world. And that kind of, I think my love of writing kind of grew from that.
Yeah. We had you on recently, didn't we, in our Irish panel?
That's right, yeah. That was fun.
It was great having you on there. Because you've got your Dublin murder series, would you write other books set in Ireland, or do you think you're going to stick to basing them elsewhere?
I think when I started writing psychological thrillers, my first one happened to be based in London, because that's where the story came from. I was literally sitting outside exit 5 from Charing Cross station, and that storyline came to me. So I called it Exit 5 from Charing Cross. So when I wrote another psych thriller, I decided then to base my psych thriller in London, just to keep them kind of together. And that's kind of gone on. So all my psych thrillers are London based, even though it's a city I don't know at all. So thank God for Google Maps. Because I don't know it. I had to ask people what you called a tube. I mean, you could call them tubes or trains or whatever. So would I write another Irish-based one? I don't know, actually. I have written another book that might be the start of a series, but it's actually based. The character's based in England, but he travels, and he's a man. Obviously, he's a man. He travels. In fact, the first story takes place in South Africa. So I haven't given that to anybody yet. So I'm going to get Bloodhound to have a look at it and see if they're interested. And that might develop into a series. I don't know. But I actually quite like, although I didn't initially, because initially when I got my contract, I was hoping to go back to writing crime series full time. But I actually really enjoy writing psych thrillers now. I have one coming out in February. So I'll see how they go. Bloodhound have been great. They're great to work with. They're very open to ideas. So if I can come up with something else, I'm sure they'll be interested. At least I hope so anyway.
Yeah, hopefully. Is the research different for a psych thriller to your more standard murder mysteries?
It depends. I try not to do an awful lot of research. Well, I do it when I have to. Places, making sure timelines, and you get people whose readers are very clever at spotting if things are wrong. So when my character, especially in the three women, where they're traveling to and from different places, to make sure that the drive is that length of time. So you have to go into Google Maps and put your timing in, and then check different times of the day, and things like sunset and sunrise, because you can't have a character saying, oh, the sun woke her up if there's no sun in February or January. So getting the time, that kind of thing, and that all takes time. And it's so, I find it so dangerous, because you go on to check the internet to check one thing, and an hour later you're looking at something else. So I sometimes just put notes in when I'm writing, put notes in my manuscript that I have to check that, and then check a lot of things together. So it's a bit more organized. Because I'm not a very organized writer. I am, my desk, which is over there, which you can't see because it's a mess, literally covered in pieces of paper, because I think of something and then I scribble it down, and then I put that piece of paper right somewhere else, and I think of something else and I scribble that down, and it goes on top of that. And then a while later, I'm trying to figure out what it was I was looking at the first time. So I'm scrubbing through my pieces of paper, trying to find the first bit. So it's rather disorganized mess. I do have a notebook for my Irish series, so all the characters have a page in that, and I'm supposed to write everything down that they do or don't do, but I frequently forget. And so I spend a lot of time going back through my books, trying to figure out what was that character's name. Yeah, it's funny though.
So we've got some questions from Samantha. She says, well, before we get to Samantha's one, Judith Baker popped on and said, congratulations on your recent book success.
Thank you very much.
And then Samantha says, what are your plans for the weekend?
My plans for the weekend, I have to finish editing on my next psych novel, which is out in September, before I start the second draft of my 5th crime series, because the psych was out in September, the crime was out in November, but I've also committed to writing another psych thriller for February, which I need to get into them by November. So I'm very bad at saying no. So I have to get all this done. So the weekend will be spent doing that. Plus, I noticed today I was out in the garden and I saw this plant. I thought, oh, that's a pretty yellow flower. And then I saw it down by the canal when we were out for a walk. It's a pretty yellow weed. So I'm going to go out and pull that up tomorrow as well. So do some gardening, if it doesn't rain on top of me. So.
And she's got a question for you here as well, Samantha, that you might want to show off your acrylic covers for, because she says, how much say do you have in your gorgeous covers?
They're thin. They're very light acrylic. I love them. I love my covers, so I have to get the one for my next one. That's the three women. Is that just gorgeous?
Yeah, she says, how much say do you have in your book covers?
Sorry?
Samantha wondered how much influence you have on your book covers.
My idea. Kind of my idea. Bloodhound are great. I just send them what I think I'd like, and they come up with a few ideas. And the titles were both mine, which is it's great, because my last publisher, you got given the title and you got given the cover, and tough if you didn't like it. With Bloodhound, I wanted, just on the three women, I just wanted 3 kind of profiles, and they came up with that, and I fell in love with it instantly. I thought it was great. And for The Perfect Life, that's kind of what I wanted, the house and the people and kind of falling apart. So they're great. It took us a little while to get the perfect life right. But I love that. And my next one is going to be even better. So actually the next one was even harder. It's called, I tell you, shh, don't tell anybody else. The next one's going to be called The Whisperer's Echo. So that's just fallen down. Didn't break though. Okay. But I was originally thinking of an echo, kind of echo sounds, but the graphics designer said, no, it looked like a science fiction novel. So he came up with something else that I loved in the end. So, and it's great. It just gives you more feeling of it's yours when you've helped with the cover design. I better not break them though. Put them down there.
No, you don't want to, they're lovely.
I don't want to break it.
So we've got Anne Good Harry on here as asking you some questions. She comes up as Facebook user on the screen. She says, where do you get your story ideas from?
They come weird and wonderful places. The Perfect Life, that story came to me when I was walking along the canal. There's a seat I walk along the canal near Semmington, and there's a wooden bench halfway along the walk I do. And one day there was a guy sitting there. And by the time I got back from that walk, I had an idea for that story. So ideas can come from weird and wonderful places. I mean, Exit 5 from Charing Cross, my self-published one, that came when I was waiting for my husband, sitting at a coffee shop outside Exit 5 in Charing Cross, and somebody passed by. So it's usually the what if or who that just trigger an idea, and sometimes they kind of simmer in my head for a while and they grow into big stories, or sometimes I just start writing. I mean, the Exit 5 from Charing Cross, I had the end of that story in my head by the time my husband turned up, and I then wrote the story back from the ending to the beginning. That makes sense. But yeah, they just come. And sometimes just, especially my crime series, I start writing and I'm not really too sure what's going to happen. And then the characters sounds kind of very daft, the characters take over, but sometimes the characters just take over and then you think, oh yeah, they're going to do this, or something. And that's great when that happens. You can just relax in and just write what they want, what they're doing, which is good.
How do you come up with such dark plots? Because she's a very nice lady to come up with such dark.
I think I must have a very wicked inside. I don't know. I suppose I've always read things like Agatha Christie and crime novels, so it's that kind of, and it's the kind of puzzle of crime as well, of having to puzzle out. For me, having to puzzle out to hide things from the reader is great fun. So yeah, and I like writing crime, and I like watching crime series on TV as well. So I don't like graphic violence though. So my books aren't particularly. There's probably more violence in my Hudson and Connolly series. But I don't tend to write much blood and gore and stuff. Can't be bothered. It just doesn't do it for me. It's about and it's like there's a little bit of romance in my Irish crime series, but there's not that much sex and stuff, because it isn't easy to write, believe me.
Anne also wondered which of your own titles was your favourite.
Which of my own titles? I love Exit 5 from Charing Cross, actually. I like that title. The three women, yeah, I like them all. That's the bottom line. I actually like all my titles. I wasn't wild about The Housewife. I wouldn't have chosen that either the cover or the title for that. That's probably the only one I didn't really like. But my last publisher didn't get any choice about. And in fairness, it has done pretty well. But you didn't get a choice in the covers. If you didn't like it, it's just the way they worked. I mean, it's the way different companies work. So I wasn't wild about that. But I like the rest of them. I liked all the covers from my Irish series. I think they're great. Again, the designer in Bloodhound did a great job with them. Much better than original self-published covers I had.
Samantha wondered if there's a setting that you've yet to use, because she said obviously Ireland's important to you in your novels.
Yeah, because I'm from Dublin, so it was easy to write books based in Dublin for me. I actually loved the third one, No Past Forgiven, because that was set over on Clare Island, where I've never been. But I wanted to write a book there because I'd heard about a hotel in a lighthouse. And there's a boutique hotel in a lighthouse on Clare Island. So I had my characters stay there. And in fact, I contacted the owners of the hotel and asked them if I could use the hotel in my book, and they said yes. So I have their menu and their rooms, because you can see the rooms on the internet. And so I was able to bring that whole hotel, and they invited me to go and stay there sometime, but it's a long way away. But someday I will. So yeah, it's nice. I actually like writing books in London because I get to go on Google Maps and you get to walk on these roads and on Google Maps. They put the person down and you wander around. Yeah, I don't mind where I write them really. I just write.
You're never tempted to choose a faraway location just to get a holiday and go on?
That'd be lovely. In fact, that series I haven't sold to anybody yet, where the action takes place in Cape Town. I was actually in Cape Town on holidays when the idea of that story came to me. In fact, it was quite funny because we were up on Table Mountain, is one of the iconic things you go to in Cape Town. You go up on a chairlift and it's a flat mountain. And when we were up there was a bomb scare and we got stuck up there for hours. But typically I came down with an idea for a story. So I wrote that story. So I was hoping that would take off as a series, and the guy, he's a gun for hire basically. And he's going to go, his next place to go is Italy. One of my favorite places. So if that series takes off, that'd be great. And then I would make a case to travel to all these places and maybe stay there for weeks and work. Be great.
So you got all the details right, yeah?
Yeah. You have to.
Samantha wonders if you ever miss nursing.
No. Absolutely no, not for a minute, not even for a second. I loved what I did. I mean, I nursed for, gosh, how many years did I nurse for? I nursed for nearly 40 years. I did love what I did. I loved care of the elderly. But towards the end, it was becoming a very difficult job. It was becoming a very political job. And I'm not particularly politically savvy. I tend to speak first and question later, which is not a good idea a lot of times. So I was glad to be out of it in the end, and I'm certainly glad to be out of it now. I mean, my friend Jenny O'Brien, she still nurses, and it's a tough job. I've always wanted to write, and now I'm living my dream now, which is great. So,
would you ever write outside of crime?
I have an idea for a science fiction novel, but science fiction is hard to sell, and I have to. This is my livelihood now, so I did think about writing a romance, but I kept wanting to kill somebody off, so that didn't work either. So no, I think I like crime. I actually like the psychological thriller aspect of it, especially writing a Bloodhound. I'm much freer what I can write, because my last publisher told me that psych novels shouldn't end happy. I like my stories ending with a positive spin or a kind of happy way. So I have more freedom what I'm writing now, which is great. So.
Samantha says, would you ever consider writing an autobiography?
An autobiography?
Story of Valerie?
No, I don't think so. I'm going to be X-rated. In my younger days, when I was a student nurse, don't forget, I was a student nurse up in Aberdeen, I was a nurse up in Aberdeen for a couple of years, and that was great fun. Believe me, I was single then, and Aberdeen was very, very wealthy, and for single nurses up in Aberdeen, it was great because there was always men, always boyfriends. It's great fun. So no to the autobiography.
No. You get all the romance in.
Yeah, I certainly get all the romance in. I get all the sex in too. Shh.
She says, who reads your work first?
Jenny does, and my sister. They're both very good at reading. A few others. Jim reads for me sometimes too. That's about it, really. I have a friend in America, Leslie. When she gets time, she might read for me as well. So. I'm with Bloodhound. I'm happier just to give them the manuscript when I think it's ready, because Betsy's very good at pointing out what doesn't work, what works. So I say it's a lot easier, which is great.
By Jim, do you mean Jim Odie?
Jim Odie, yeah. Jim's a sweetheart.
He's great, isn't he? Can you tell us a little bit about your noir at bar in Bath?
Oh, yeah, that's great. I was asked to read at Noir at the Bar in Edinburgh early last year by the publisher I was with at the time, book tour. And I went up, and I remember it was probably the wettest day in Edinburgh. And the rain was coming down in torrents. And I didn't know anybody, and I went into the pub, and I went downstairs in the pub, and that's where I was told to go. And I walked into this room, and all I could see were men all looking at me. And I'm thinking, So I went up to the bar, and I said to the guy, I said, is this Noir at the Bar? He said, no, this is a quiz night, some men's quiz night. So I scarpered back up the stairs, and they double booked the room. So I met the organisers then, and it was grand. So we went, in fact, we ended up having it in a cafe. But it was a lovely evening, and the people who run it are so nice. Jackie, can't remember her surname, that's terrible. But it was such a lovely evening. When I came home, I thought to myself, it's so unfair. All these wonderful Noir at the Bars, all these stuff all up the north, and there's nothing down here. So I decided, well, start one myself. So I contacted Jim, and I said to him, fancy starting something like this? And Jim's game. So I found a pub. It's in Bath, near the bus station. And we had our first one, I think, in September of that year. And we've had 3 or 4. But then, unfortunately, the pub's closed. So we had to cancel the one in May, and the one in July will be cancelled, I suppose, as well. So as soon as pubs are open, we can have it again. It's great. It's just writers, and it was mostly writers getting together and nattering. Well, everyone, we'd read a little bit of our book, our book just published on one we were writing, and nattered, and it was great because Facebook is fantastic, but you can't beat a face-to-face contact, which was really fun. So Jim and I became very friendly, and he's a really nice guy. He writes great books. I've just finished reading Mystery Island. In fact, it's just a romp of a read. It really is so enjoyable. Yeah, great fun. So
you just said hello, Val, on the screen. There's Jim. I would agree with you. I read Mystery Island as well. It's a good read.
It's really fun, isn't it? Now I'm starting to read Jim's, or to read Jenny's next book, Darkest Night. It's a sequel to Silent Cry, so I'm reading that. Starting to read that arc now, so there's always something.
You've been your favourite books recently? That was a question further up that I didn't ask you. Sorry.
Favorite books recently? I loved Vicky Patton's Girl Lost. I thought it was great. I loved Jenny's Silent Cry. I thought that was great. And Mystery Island. I thought that was fun. I think Mystery Island is fun because it just doesn't take itself seriously at all. I mean, it's just a good laugh. Actually, normally I'm reading crime novels or psych novels, and which are darker and deeper, and which I love. Don't get me wrong, but Mystery Island was just fun. But I'm actually really I've just started reading Darkest Night, the sequel to Silent Cry, and that's really good. I like crime novels, so they're probably the best ones I've read recently. So
I think we've got both of Jim and Jenny coming to join us soon.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Jenny. Crazy people.
Samantha said her son asked how Fatty Arbuckle is.
Fatty Arbuckle is dying in the heat. It's my cat, Caroline.
Okay.
Big, fat, black cat. I swear to God, he's crossed with a koala bear because he sleeps 23 hours of the day. But he's dying in this heat. So sometimes we can't find him because he's out lying under a bush. And because he's totally black, you can't see him in the shadows and shades. Then he comes up meowing his head off because he's just too hot. So, yeah, and all the neighborhood cats come in our garden and kill the birds and do horrible things, and he just lies there as if to say, "Let him at it." He just doesn't move. But he's good. Thank you. He likes life.
She also says, what books or resources do you think are good for aspiring writers to learn from?
I liked Stephen King's one on writing. I thought that was really good. But other books that have been recommended to me, I found them hard, not helpful. I think the best thing to do to learn from is to read a lot of anything, and talk to other writers. I think that's the best thing to do. I'm mentoring a guy in America at the moment. That's great. I really enjoy doing that. And a lot of his questions are simple things like, should he be doing this or should he be doing that? And I just say to relax, just write it. Don't worry about editing or anything. Just write the story. And I think that is the secret to writing a book. I mean, I think that's why I went wrong, because I dreamed about writing for a long, long time, but I kept starting and then I'd read what I read and think, it's rubbish. Until one day I said, I'm going to finish this book. And I literally finished it. I never stopped writing since. So I think that is the secret, is not to worry about what you're writing, just to write.
Jim asks, have you got your book displays yet?
No, I haven't. That's why these are funny. These are stuck up with blue tack, Jim. I've got blue tack stuck on these. That's why they fell down. I will have, though, by the next meeting. Because Jim and I were put to shame by somebody else at one of the at the bar nights. They had all their books on stands, and ours were flat on the table. So we were put to shame. So I haven't got them yet, Jim, but if you get them, you can give me one.
I'm just scrolling back up through the questions to see which ones I've not asked you. Samantha says, do you watch any TV shows on Netflix?
Don't have Netflix. I do watch. Do you know what I'm watching at the moment? Where I started watching Downton Abbey from the very beginning. Oh, and do you know, I'm enjoying it more the second time around than the first time. It's great. I love Downton Abbey and Coronation Street, and crime novels, or crime series if I can get them. I'm very fond of foreign crime series. I loved The Bridge, Beck. All those ones are great. So.
Have you ever attempted to write anything historical?
Historical, no. That's too much like hard work. It's too much like history. History wasn't my forte.
Jason asks, which of your books has been the most popular?
The most popular, probably The Three Women, so far anyway. That's done the best for me so far. I'm looking up there because I have them all on the wall. That's done the best, because I sold 20,000 copies of that in 2 months, which is really good. Whereas my first one, Secrets Between Us, that you liked, Caroline, I sold 26,000 copies of that in a year. So difference, yeah. So, and The Housewife sold pretty well, but The Three Women has been really good.
Go out and buy The Secrets Between Us, guys. It's amazing.
Yeah. So the thing is, when you write a book, you don't think about, is it going to sell or isn't it going to sell? What you think about, are people going to like it? And you're just hoping that people like it, and then give you nice reviews and say nice things. And it is so marvelous when I've had a couple recently, and people message me to say they're really enjoying my book, and they're buying the next one. They're going to enjoy that, and that makes it all worthwhile, really. You don't I think most readers, now I'm just talking for myself, you don't write a book thinking, it's going to make me $1 million. Of course, you hope it does, but that's not why you write it. You write because of the stories in your head and you want to get it out. But you just want to get it down on paper and you want people to enjoy it. And when people enjoy my stories, that's the thrill. Okay, it's nice when the money comes to the bank, I pay my bills and buy myself clothes, but it's the absolute sheer pleasure of someone saying, I really enjoyed that, and giving you a 5-star review. That makes my day.
Sam says, how do you feel when you stand up in front of people to read your work?
I'm one of those lucky people. When I'm nervous, I talk more. The only thing is I talk faster. So I have to concentrate on slowing down. Because if I spoke at the speed that I would do when I'm really nervous, you would not be able to understand me at all. So I don't mind. The only thing is I'm one of those people who haven't really dawned on me that I can't see without my glasses. And sometimes I forget to bring them, that I can't see at all. So I don't mind. I worked in medical sales for a few years. And I had to do talks to people, so I kind of got used to that as well. But speaking slowly.
Okay. Jason says, which of your books was the hardest to write?
The hardest, I think probably the one I've just written, the fifth in my Irish crime series. I think has been difficult to write, and I don't really know why. I think people put themselves under pressure. So I'm under pressure to make sure it's as good as, because the first four I've got really good reviews and people have really liked them. And I think I'm putting myself under pressure to make sure this is as good. And most writers never think their own work is any good. And Jenny and I have a laugh at each other and we support each other a lot. So we always get to the stage where this is rubbish. And you get to that stage, and you will get to it. And I know anyone say, no, it's not. You always say that, because I say it to her. But you always get to it, and there's always something in the back of your head saying, little voice saying, oh, maybe this one is rubbish. So that's always a fear. So that this one was probably the hardest.
I think Sam has been stalking you, because she says, how long have you lived in your beautiful cottage, and how much time does the garden take? I think it was your own cottage you shared a picture of.
We've been living here no, that wasn't mine, Sam. That wasn't my house. That was on Facebook. I can't remember. That's someone's passed on to me. No, my house is beautiful. But it wasn't like that, though. Oh God, no. We've been living here. How long are we living here? Since 2006, 14 years. God almighty. Yeah, no, that wasn't my garden, Sam. I wish. My garden's full of weeds. I used to be much better. When we moved here first, I was very keen in the garden, and we won prizes actually in the local town. But unfortunately, since I got my publishing contracts and I have deadlines to meet, and especially since I keep committing myself to writing more, I just don't have time for it anymore. That's why there's weeds in my garden about 3 feet high that I thought were flowers.
Jim as well had a question for you. He says, The Perfect Life is brilliant, but slightly different from some of your other books. Was that deliberate? Was it written for the market or natural progression?
Just the story in my head, because that's the one that came to me from that seat on the canal. So I actually didn't think it was any different. I actually didn't think, and again, it's one of those things, I didn't think it was as good, because the response to the three women was excellent. I was actually worried that people wouldn't like The Perfect Life. But no, I really enjoyed writing that. It just, the way the story came together, it was one of those stories that just literally, it came to me as I wrote. And I did enjoy writing it. So
natural progression.
Natural progression. That sounds good.
I'm just using Jim's words.
Yeah. Trust Jim.
Jason asks, are you a Guinness drinker?
No. Hate stuff. I'm like Andrew's in my books. I don't like stuff at all. I've even tried drinking Guinness with blackcurrant in it, which is what you do if you don't like Guinness. No, I think it looks beautiful. It looks really good, but I don't like the taste. I'm not a beer drinker at all. I'm a wine, gin, anything else drinker, but not beer. If I'm desperate in the summertime, and when I worked in medical sales, I used to go out with groups of mostly guys to conferences and stuff, and I never liked asking for wine, so I used to ask for shandy, heavy on the lemonade, light on the beer. So it was basically a big glass of lemonade.
Jim also says that The Secret Life is his favourite book of the year, with one of Andy Barrett's.
Oh, that's really nice. Thank you, Jim. I'll pay you later.
And Sam says, are there any student day stories that have inspired any themes in your books?
Or any?
Do you have any student day stories that have inspired any themes in your books?
No, I don't think so. None that I could actually talk about. No. Don't think so.
And then she says, other than writing, are you creative in any other ways?
No. I'm trying to think who's around me. I have creative. Not really. No, I'm actually a very untidy person. I like to think I'm a good gardener, but I'm not really. When you see that weeds are 3 feet high in your garden, you realize you're definitely not. So no, not really. I don't have any time to be any creative any other way anyway, because I'm just writing, editing, or doing second drafts all the time. So
You got your cover ideas though. That's quite creative.
yes, but you should see the diagrams that I send off to my publisher. I mean, pencil drawings of images you'd hardly recognize as being human. So yeah, the fact that they can actually interpret them are pretty good.
Do you work on just one book at a time, or do you edit and start another one?
At the moment, I'm working on edits of my September book, and I've just finished the first draft of my 5th crime series. So when I finish the edits, I'm going to go back and finish the drafts of that, and then I'm going to start my new one.
Jason Kelly says, would you ever write something based on real life events?
No, definitely not. I mean, for me, writing is an escape from reality. And the same way as I read, I don't like reading. I don't read real life events. I read to escape. I always have done. As a child, I grew up I was one of 9 in a 3-bedded semi. So I read to escape, and it was great. I mean, you dive into a book and you're in a different world. And that's the way I write as well. So I wouldn't write real life. Just doesn't appeal to me.
And we've got a question saying, have you ever written any shorts or novellas?
No. Again, I find short stories difficult. I've never written a novella, mainly because my books just kind of keep going. I think short stories they're a great skill if you can write them. I just don't. I've tried to write short stories, and they just don't. They don't end up being short stories. They end up being books. So no.
We talked about the 3 women earlier. Would you be tempted to write a follow-on for that? Because it kind of ends ambiguously, doesn't it?
Yeah. It could. I think it could lend itself to a sequel, but I'd like to see what happened to her, actually, Beth, because I was trying to get that she was kind of almost a combination of the 3 women at the end. So I don't know what I do with her. Something I might think about if I run out of ideas. But so far, I don't have enough time to write down all the stories that are in my head. So maybe someday.
Sam says, do you have a favourite book of Jenny's?
Of Jenny's, I loved Silent Cry. That was great fun. I think she's written a great character in Gabby Darren, a new female detective, feisty, strong-willed. I think, and I've read Jenny's 3rd one, just a very early arc of her 3rd one. I think it's brilliant. Yeah, I think it's a really good series. It should catch on really well.
Would you ever co-write with anyone?
No.
No.
I'm too disorganized. I think I'd probably kill. Someone would end up killing me. I'm a real pantser of a writer in that I sometimes have no idea how my book is going to go. I just go with it. I mean, sometimes I have a vague idea. I have a vague idea of my next psych novel, but it's a very vague idea. I'm not really too sure what's going to happen. So working with somebody who would have a different way of writing, I think, I don't know how people do it, to be honest. I know they do, and they do it very successfully. Trisha Dixon and Anita Waller recently wrote a book together and was very good. Liar. I don't know how people do that, to be honest with you. I think I would drive people crazy. And I'm very easily distracted, as Jenny would tell you. I'm distracted by everything, so I'd get nothing done. I'm bad enough as I am, for God's sake.
So you say you're a pantser, but then the books, I've read a few of your books, and they're so complex in the stories and how intricate they are. You must have some idea of where they're going. You can't make them that.
No.
Oh, really?
They literally, I mean, I'm just lucky so far. I have been lucky that they've all worked out. And it's just the way my brain seems to work with them. They just go. I mean, they generally start off like the perfect life with seeing that person on the bench and thinking about, in fact, it was quite funny because when I wrote that story first, the Molly actually, they have a sexual relationship, and my editor didn't like it, so the sex came out, and they just had a kind of a meeting more. Yeah, but I just let the story develop. I mean, pantsers, that's what pantsers do. They just kind of hope that everything works out at the end. I know other people have planned them out or planned bits out and try and fit it among them. I don't generally. I mean, sometimes the ideas just come to me and I just write them. So
Jim says being a pantser is a way to go, so I'm guessing that he is maybe one as well.
Absolutely.
That in his author chat.
Yeah.
To do with us. Sam says, how did you become to be a mentor?
It was actually through, it's through a Facebook group, and I can't remember which one it was. This guy contacted me and said, "Could you mentor me?" And I said, "Yeah." I tend to say yes to everything, which I'm kind of dangerous. In fact, two guys did relatively close together, and the second guy wrote poetry, and he wanted to know how to get published, and I have no idea. I don't know anything about getting poetry published. I do write the odd poem myself, but I'm not very good. And I didn't know enough, and he dropped me. So the other guy is very nice. He's writing a crime series, and he doesn't ask an awful lot. He sends things to me now and then, and I give my ideas back. And he just really wants someone to point him in the right direction, which I'm quite happy to do. And the writing community is very good like that. It's you see one, do one, teach one kind of thing. If people help you, so you try to help somebody else. And I'm always very happy to pass on little I know to anybody who will listen. And not everybody listens, so.
Kerry Watts has said, "Hello, Valerie. You're looking."
Hello, Kerry.
Sam says, "Did you write before you decided to do it as a career? Have you always written stories?"
I've always tried. I think the problem is when it becomes a dream, you're actually afraid to write in case you fail, and then the dream dies, so you don't try, and that's kind of becomes a vicious circle. So it was only when I was almost 50, and I thought to myself, if I don't start now, I am never going to do this. So shut up talking about doing it and just do it. And I literally sat myself down and kept writing until I got a book finished, and I haven't stopped writing since. It was like letting a cork out of a bottle. It just that was it. But I actually self-published 9 before I got my contract, so I wrote and worked. But I worked 12-hour shifts in nursing, and so you worked 3 days and you had 4 days off, kind of thing. So it lent itself to writing that way. But writing full time it's just a dream, and it's great. I love it. I was probably more organized when I worked, having said that now, but.
We've only got a few minutes left. Do you want to give us a little bit of detail about your most recent book?
The most recent book, The Perfect Life.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about The Perfect Life in case anyone's not bought it yet.
Perfect Life is about a couple, Molly and Jack, who they're, I was saying my age, but they're not my age. They're in their 40s. Their 2 kids are grown up and gone to university, and Molly's starting to feel a bit empty. She had dreams to be all kinds, and now she's just a housewife. She works, but her job isn't very exciting. She thinks her husband might be having an affair, but she's not really too sure. So she wants to go away for a weekend with him to get back together again a bit. And they get an invitation from a friend, and he won't go. So she goes off on her own. And that's when she meets this man by the canal. And she's desperate for a bit of excitement in her life. So when she thinks he's coming on to her, but in fact, he's not. And she's devastated by this stupidity, and she dashes back to London. And then, as it turned out, the police arrive on her doorstep because there's been a murder and she's implicated, and her husband's starting to look more and more pale and thin, and she's worried about him, and she's not too sure what's happening in her life. And then she gets knocked down. She thinks it's an accident, and the police tell her no, it wasn't, it was deliberate. So someone's trying to kill her. So she doesn't know what's happening. So it all comes together in the end. That's it. You have to read it to find out what happens.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone will now from that description.
It's terrible. It's actually very hard for me to synopsize my own book, which is ridiculous because you think I should be able to, because I wrote the flaming thing, but it's actually hard. But I really enjoyed that book. I have had readers criticize because my characters all tend to be wealthy, well-to-do, they live in nice houses. I like writing about people who have nice houses because it means I get to write about nice houses and nice clothes and parties. And I don't want to write gritty novels. There's people who write them extremely well, and they don't need somebody else not doing it very well. So I write novels about people who have money and they're not happy, and Molly, in fact, has to make huge decisions at the end because, I won't do a spoiler on it. So
I suppose giving your characters that, like, an element of wealth and ability to travel and things does open up a range of like story possibilities as well.
Yeah, and it's also this thing about, someone have everything and then they lose it. So that's kind of a standard trope in books, stories. So it's how people deal with losing what they value or what they think they value most, and sometimes they realize that it's not what they value most. So they're just stories, and I enjoy writing them. So
I'm going to sneak in a final question from Sam because she's asked it twice in the stream and I haven't asked her yet. She says, have you been able to start making travel plans yet?
Well, I'm going to a wedding in Dublin at the end of July. So we're definitely going to that. I told my niece that I would steal a rowing boat and row across the ocean to get to that wedding. I'm definitely going there. We had planned to go to Austria later in the year, but Robert doesn't want to fly. So we are going to Devon. I actually managed to book a hotel. I didn't think I'd get a booking, so we did. So we're going to Devon for a week. And we both love Linton, Lynmouth, that area, which is lovely. So that's our travel plans for this year.
Yeah, Devon's so lovely.
It's gorgeous, really. But walks, really, really nice walks. I have no doubt I'll come back with a story. Holidays, I'll come back with a story of some sort.
You can go visit Agatha Christie's house down in Devon and things, can't you? That must be home for plenty of crime inspiration.
Yeah, push someone off a cliff or something.
That's it. That's our time.
That's it. That whole hour. I talked for a whole hour. Oh my goodness.
You talked for a whole hour.
Oh my goodness.
Give us one final reminder of your books and where people can buy them. And
you can buy them all on Amazon. And just in case you forget what to look at, I can show you my gorgeous glossy. Whoops.
Go this way. Yeah.
A gorgeous glossy, The Perfect Life, or my gorgeous glossy, The Three Women.
Sorry a bit again.
Right. They're available on Amazon. The Three Women is on audio, and The Perfect Life will be on audio in another month. And it's like my Irish series. They're coming on audio eventually. So I know people really like audio nowadays. The Simple Life, No Simple Deaths on audio, and the other three are coming out in audio eventually. But they're available in ebooks and paperbacks at the moment on Amazon.
Our newest admin, actually, Alex, loves to read on audio because he's dyslexic, so he'll be really excited to hear that because he's always on the lookout for new authors.
That's good.
But yeah, thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you back.
Thanks a million, Karen. I really enjoyed it. And thanks, everybody, for the lovely questions. Thanks, Sam, for all the questions. And thanks, Jim and Kerry. Jenny. Bye, everyone. See you, Karen.